Now make you better. Better now, make you better now. Now, Baba, hey. Now make you smiling now. Now make you smiling. Now make you win now. Now make you successful. Successful now make you promotion now. Hey. Now, Baba God, you can't do it. Now make me dancing now. Now make me rejoicing. Now make me jubilating. Now make me celebrating. Now make my life final. Hey, I now choose my story to run. Hey, I now choose my life to run. No. Hey, now make my life better. Better, now make my life better now. Now make me dancing now. Now make my life peculiar. Peculiar, now make my life fantastic. Fantastic, now make my life tremendous. Tremendous, now make my life fabulous. Hey, now Father God, you don't do it, you know. Sister, now make your life beautiful. Brother, now make your life handsome. Sister, now make you shining now. Sister, now make you shining now. Tell me now make you beautiful. Beautiful, now make you smiling now. Smiling now place you on a higher mountain, yeah. Now, Baba God, you not do it for you. Now make your life peculiar. Now make you rejoice. Now make you smiling.
Okay, welcome to you in Radio Land. Those of you listening to us or watching this video, wherever you're watching this video, in Liberia, around the world, we'd love to welcome you, our Talk TV Media Network. This is a media network created for you. We are here for you. We are the voice for the voiceless. We go places where others do not go. Here in studio today, we have a very distinguished guest with us. A brother, a father, a big brother, an uncle. He's here watching with us, visiting with us, and we are here to have a dialogue. Former principal of Foya Free Pentecostal Mission School. Well, it seems like I won't let the cat out of the bag in the first place. He's going to tell us who he is himself. Welcome to you, Mr. Bimba.
Thank you, Mr. Gado. Thank you for welcoming me. It's been a pleasure and a great opportunity to be with you today.
Tell us, who is Mr. Bimba, Nathaniel Bimba?
It's a difficult thing to define yourself sometimes. If you come from the point of view of modesty, but I'm son of Omer Farah Bimba and Wata Bimba from Foya. I am from the Foya mission. I grew up in the mission, went to school in the Foya mission, and eventually went to Tamatila Public School, Matalatra High School, graduated, came and volunteered for 1 year at the school, and decided to matriculate at the Baptist Theological Seminary, where I graduated with a bachelor's degree in religious education, and decided to come back at a very critical time to take over the school in Foya, and we ran the school from 1980. That was 86, 87, 89, and to 90 when the war came and we had to flee the war. The story after that is another whole story, but I think this is the story about me and my upbringing and my uh, location in Foya.
So, just to say in short, you are a son of the soil from Foya,
That's right.
born soil, a son of the late Reverend legend Fala Bimba.
That's right.
Welcome to studio. It's myself and all the guys. I extremely delighted and honored to have you with us today in the studio. And today we will be talking a lot about Foya, the mission, um, the school, the church. Quite a lot to cover in his 1 hour section that we have. But we will try. We'll try.
I don't know how we're going to be able to put all of that in one capsule, but like you said, we can try and see what we do.
Okay, so with no further delay, we're just gonna get in right away with the discussions of what we have on our plate. If you need to adjust the mic a little bit to you at your own comfort, you can as well. Um, I want to start with the school
Okay.
because I'm a product of the Foya Free Pentecostal School. I remember the days when you were principal at the school, how things were being taken care of and ran. What's your perspective during those days before leaving Foya or the institution? What was your experience being a principal of the school?
Well, I have to admit to you that it was very challenging because I was just a fresh product from training, and my hands were not tried, so it was like baptism by fire.
Hmm.
But the challenge was that either we did it, it was not undone. Given the history of the missionaries, they had come, built a school, and it got to a point where they had to leave. And when they left, people took over who didn't manage the school in a way that we had a future. So the future of the school was blink. I came and took over a school that was dilapidated, a school that had no chairs, no books, nothing good was happening to it. I mean, you also what it was, no roof. In fact, the very office where the principal sat down
Mm.
was the leaking point of the school. The decks was moved from one place of the room to another to avoid the water leaking.
Wow.
And by the grace of God and the grace of many young people of the church that God inspired at that point in time,
Yeah.
were able to rebuild the school, and it became a vibrant school. I can tell you that I feel very satisfied and fulfilled within me for the commitment and the dedication and the ability of what a performance that we show up in at the school at that point in time.
That was going to be my question. How did you get it all done? Coming up from seminary and all those, baptism by fire. How could you have, muster and get that institution to be one of the best institution in the district?
Well, I can tell you it was nothing short of a miracle. It must have been God's guidance. Nobody in their right senses, at my age, I think I was 25 or 26, was willing, would have been willing to take such a challenge. But I didn't see the age, I didn't see my limitation. I only saw the possibility of what God could do. And I can promise you that one of the reasons for success was the much prayer of our mothers.
Okay.
They were praying. Like I tell you a story. Just one day, I was not feeling well. I was lying down in the little room where the security guys would sleep to take care of the school.
Yeah.
And right at that window, one of the mothers who was walking by the school just stopped there and raised their hands up to look up to heaven, to pray for the school, to pray for the young people who had come to take over the school. So I said, oh my God, this must be the reason for the success of the school. And I can tell you one other thing that we faced was the antagonism by other schools,
right,
and by other people who didn't like the mission.
Mm-hmm.
The mission was really a place of controversy because the way the gospel came and the way the gospel tore apart the culture and every other thing,
Right.
create a militancy. So there was that edginess all the time. So there were a lot of people who didn't like what we were doing. And there we were, forging over the idea of building a school and taking over the work of our parents. It was a pride. It was fun. As a matter of fact, especially when all the crew came together, the young people came together to join hands with me for us to rebuild the school and not let it go down.
Wow.
It was fun, but it was a great challenge. Great challenge.
A great challenge, he said. But he got it done with the support of others and prayers from, elders and members of the church. Teamwork, basically, is what you're talking about.
That's true.
Right there, teamwork. What was it like, your departure from the school? What did that mean to you? What was it like leaving the institution you have served, leaving everything behind?
Well, in the days of war, like there wasn't much of thinking of what you're leaving behind. There was more of thinking as to where you're going. So if I would think about it right now, in, in hindsight, it was like tearing apart your soul.
Wow.
It was tearing apart your soul, something you invested in. The sacrifices we put into it had to be, left undone. Of course, we still have other people who are still there, who took over, but like Nigeria will never be the same kind of story. It's like a close of a generation in a harsh way, and then a beginning of a new thing.
Wow.
That would be my reflection of what was then.
I can just relate with you, leaving everything and thinking where you're heading, where you're going, all of that. And so the war came, you left Liberia, drove you out with your family.
Sure.
And I know because of time constraint, it's hard to say when you left Liberia, where did you go? Where did you pass? Where did you pass? But currently, I'm assuming you are a resident of Canada.
Yeah, I'm resident in Canada right now with my family. We've been there for I think close to 20 years or more.
Wow.
Then and even in Canada, it became a good thing. It was a story that needs to be told of what God was doing and how God performed great things and so on. Like I would say, in the days that I came to Canada, very few people were in the part of Canada where I was.
Wow.
And
where is that specifically?
I was in Edmonton, Alberta, which is the northwest of Canada.
Okay.
One of the coolest parts of Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, and you come from nowhere, and then you enter in the midst of winter, in the middle of winter.
From the hot tropics to cold, freezing.
Cold. Like the shock, one of the greatest questions that came to my mind is how could anything survive here? Because when we landed in mid-February, it's like everything was white. Fields covered by snow, the houses covered by snow, the roads covered by snow. And I know that if you have animals or plants, you got to see them, you got to see some green stuff.
Right.
It tells you life. But this was all snow. And I'm asking, can anything live here? How are we going to survive here? I couldn't make it up. So it's strange that today we're still living there. Children have grown up and they're going to school, even grandchildren. I understand just today I got a message. My oldest granddaughter is starting university. So you can imagine.
Oh, wow.
How far we've come from and how far we've gone.
Your oldest granddaughter is in university.
Yeah.
Wow. Congrats. Hats off to you. Long way. A long way. Let's go back to let's take a retract back to the mission. The late Fala Bimba, your dad. Give us a little history about him.
Well, it's a very intriguing history. It's something I'm working on right now. I have a lot of data collected to put together in a book. But he was a man who was born and bred in Shello. And Shello, in the days, was a town of chieftaincy. related to Tamatila, but I understand from the stories he told me that he was a very vibrant young man who participated, who was active, who energized a lot of other young people. He animated the life of the town.
Right.
And I'm told that there comes a day, there comes a night when he had a dream. In his dream, he saw a vision of angels. That's when he had never heard anything about the gospel. Nobody was, there was no church. This is when he got that vision. And there was a ladder coming from the sky up to the ground. And he was asked by these uh, white dressed persons to climb the ladder. And he climbed up to the highest point of the ladder. And they pointed out to him the burning world, that the world was on fire, and that he had a responsibility to bring salvation and rescue to the men and women who were going to burn if he didn't do what God wanted him to do. So the day after this dream,
Yeah.
missionaries entered the town.
Wow.
You can see how God orchestrated his conversion. And that night after they preached about Jesus Christ who came and died for people, and that if anybody wanted to be saved, they could be saved. He was the first person. Now knowing that God is, has already ushered him into something different, so he uh, he went forward and gave his life to Jesus Christ, and everybody laughed. They thought this man could not be the one that you're looking for. He's a troublemaker in town.
Wow.
He's the one who is not serious. He's the joker of the place, and so on. Though they took it for granted. They didn't know that was war. Spiritual war had begun. And the next day, he took action. All his juju or whatever fetish he had,
Right.
he gave up and he burned it. And then he had two wives. He gave up the second wife. And people said, "Oh, is he going crazy? What's going on?" And then he had some palm trees, I understand. He gave them away. Everything that was worldly, he gave away. He made a decision. Like he said, I've decided to follow Jesus. It was a decision. And right after that, he became trouble for the Kisi chieftain, what is now the Foya district. Like he didn't care about his life. He cared about the calling of God on his life, and he went from place to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. And with the preaching came a lot of persecution, a near death situation several times. There was a time he told me when the the society people wanted to walk through the mission from Foya town. Foya town is located behind the mission, and then the Foya commercial part,
Right.
down the field that we call, is between the mission. The mission is between these two locations. So this society group of people were supposed to walk through the mission, and somebody came and told them. So they had an agreement. The three founders of the church, Omer Musa Keledu and Omer Samaya and himself, that they were going to be in town to stop them from whatever they wanted to do, because this place was not for society, it was for God.
Wow.
And when the time came, he stood up. He heard them coming. Usually, when the devil is coming, there's a forerunner. So the forerunner brings the bell. He's ringing the bell, and he heard this bell, and he came up right to where the church is today, right in that open space.
All right.
And he stopped him from going through. And he went back and told the devil that the devil and the society people that they stop us, we can't go. And then the whole group, gathered to come, and they were coming. I'm told that they all came and he stopped them. And for several minutes, nobody could do anything. They couldn't they couldn't disobey this one person. And we're told that eventually a soldier who was among them was the first person who would hate him, because the rest of the society were afraid. They had not seen somebody challenging all of them in together, because this is a powerful force. So for one person to have stopped them from doing what they want to do was unreal. So the soldier hit him first, and then everybody jumped him. That whole group, hundreds of people, were beating him.
Wow.
Like there was no rescue for him. But we're told that something happened that he couldn't even explain himself. that removed him from the midst of these people
Mhm.
and hid him to a place where they were digging for bricks, dead bricks. And he was hiding there, but they couldn't see him. But he was beaten mercilessly. And eventually they dispersed, and he got out and decided to go to the missionaries. And he told the missionaries couldn't help them because they were foreigners and it was the local kind of situation. By then, the government had been, what should I say, have been spread into the different districts, the provinces. They call it this is the provinces.
Yeah. The
And
clans.
yeah, the clans and so on. So there was a district commissioner who was stationed in Kolahon. So he decided to go to Kolahon and report himself. Well, he can't even speak English. So how is he going to tell people what happened and explain what happened? It was difficult, but with the nature that God has given him, the spirit of God in him, he walked all the way to Kolahon with bruises all over him, and went to the commission and knocked at the door. And they opened the door and said, "What happened?" And he says, "Society people, boom, 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 boom." Yeah, animated what happened, and they had an interpreter and they explained the situation and so on. Eventually, there was a big hearing, and because he was alone, he didn't have a witness, so they wanted to testify that nothing happened.
Right.
So he named the people who he remembered who were active violators, and they came to deny, and they went to court. The first person they called as a witness, when he stood to witness to testify falsely, he fell and dropped. The rest of the witnesses were afraid to come up and say that they didn't do
Well,
it.
so typically it seems like his God was fighting for him.
God
God
was
was really
definitely fighting for him.
Yeah.
In spite of the language barrier and the lack of education, and I mean, not knowing what governmental things or local, judicial things were, he was still able to, God was able to defend him because this guy came and I think he called him Yakpawulo or something. He said Yakpawulo was the first person who hit me. So he comes up and say, he won't say a word, he dropped. He's foaming. And then they begin to sing.
Wow.
Glory, hallelujah, Jesus has conquered. And they were singing. I mean, they were a wonderful group of people, God loving, God fearing, fearless people who took the fire of God into the district.
So is it fair to say that it's because Foya Bimba that the gospel came to Foya?
Well, I don't think that's a fair thing to say because the gospel is not it's not a human thing, it's a God sent thing. Like I told you, first of all, God revealed himself to him in an unusual way. But I can say he was an instrument.
Well, God used him for that purpose.
Wonderfully.
For the chiefdom.
Yeah,
For
God
the
used him
entire.
wonderfully. And here's the dynamic of the whole situation. Like he was deep into the things of the word. Very deep. There was nothing he didn't do. So he knew the depths of the dark side,
So
and then he got in the depths of the right side, so to speak. Right? So he wasn't afraid of any of these words.
so help me with this. How did the alignment with the Swedish missionaries, the Swedish mission, how the mission was built? Help me with that. How so as soon as he prayed that prayer with the coming of the Swedish missionaries, they kind of, connected with him.
Well, it was when he was staying shallow, right? And there was a lot of fights and strife and so on. And he would do very radical things. I think one of the things he did that shallow people really didn't want is they had this place that was a shrine bush, and the crops that were grown there like reeds, and nobody had the right to cut those reeds. So he wanted to construct stuff, and he wanted to cut them off. And they said, no, 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 no. So it was the people in Shalom, the Chief Kamatila and others said, you know what? He gotta leave. So they took him and carried him to the missionaries. And I can tell you one thing, he never slept to Shalom since that day, all his life.
So the place that we call Boma
Yeah.
is his establishment.
Yeah, that's where the establishment is, the school, the church, and the hospital, and some residential housing.
Wow. So looking at that, I guess some of us were nowhere even close to be born, but we have experience. We've gone back. We've seen all that development, and he's now passed on, gone to heaven, but the memories still live on. The children, the Bimbas, they are all over the world. For you, Mr. Bimba, a lot of people know you. You know, a lot of people that grew up back home uh, knows you in all different facets. And my question to you is, since you're being in Canada, with you leaving the mission back, what have you done to help the mission?
Well, I must admit to you that I haven't done much for the mission as I should, but in late years, if not recent years, I should say, I have been trying to visit,
Mhm.
and I'm interested in engaging the the mission. Of course, from with his departure, a lot of things happened, and there were a lot of gaps between us and the mission.
Right.
And I wasn't thinking of going back, but I'm beginning to feel a hole, like a reason, motivation, a drive to be a part of that. So I'm looking forward to getting more involved than I have been. I was trying to build my life in Canada for me and my children and so on, but you see, that is not what God wants me to do at this point in time. I'm seeing me wanting to return to build the foundation, to build on the foundation of my fathers, and to help get the mission to where it needs to go. So many things have been happening in terms of prayer, in terms of God speaking to my heart to be able to come there. And I can tell you, there are a lot of people who told me, you know what, you need to come here. I deny it, but I'm seeing the hand of God that He wants me to be a part of that work there. So lately, about maybe 2 years ago, I brought some few stuff of mechanism to bring to the school. And because of the visit, a lot of interest and challenging things I saw that were happening that I could help resolve. One of those, as a teacher, was the instructional capacity in the school was not to the top level. It was not up to standard. So I'm trying right now to develop a concept that will help to bridge that gap.
Mm.
I read a lot on the Liberian policy and Liberian plan and program for education.
Right.
There's so much on the papers, but there's very little done. But the reason why much is not done is because of resources, of funding, and so on. With technology such as you have, there's a way we can bridge that gap to be able to deliver much more effectively and to develop the capacity of the teachers in the school for it to be one of the best. So my goal right now is to get that school to where it has never been.
Okay, that's clear. But the question that comes to mind is this: with your absence for these couple of years away from home, and now that God's speaking to you, to go back and give back, because we realize when God blessed you, He blessed you for a purpose, for a reason. There are those that have been behind, holding the mantle over the years. You know the concept. This concept with Liberians, even the same issue with dual citizenship. These people think how politically it has been. People, those of us going back home, people think we're taking away their jobs, right? So now, what do you have to say with someone who's been there, holding this ground for these years? Mr. Bimba is coming back to take our position. Mr. Bimba is coming back to take over. What do you have to say to that? Because this, I would think, thoughts that may flow through the minds of people.
Yeah, here's how I see it, right? I see it as a Moses situation. Moses was bred and brought up in Egypt. And Moses was trained, very trained in Egypt. But because he was fighting for his people, he ran into exile. And while he's in exile, he meets God. And when he meets God, he saw the task of returning to Egypt as a big task. And God, in his ways, made it possible for him to go. And one of the things that Moses learned from God is First, God tells him he sees the ground burning. He sees, the bush burning, but it wouldn't burn. But there's a fire of God. And that God asks him in that conversation, what do you have in your hands? And he says he had a rod. And he said, throw that rod down. Throw the rod down, the rod becomes a serpent. The serpent becomes a rod, and so on. So I'm looking at it from a God perspective. There might be certain dynamics for re-entry, but if you go in God, God is going to resolve that. And I think there are a lot of people who want to see me in Foya. There's the need for my energy through, through the blessing of God. That will make Foya a different place.
Okay. For those of you in listening land, listening and watching, following us, again, this is Talk TV Media Network. I'm Sam Gadu. My guest in the studio is Mr. Nathaniel Bimba, son of the late Fala Bimba. He's visiting with us and giving all his input, having a dialogue, chit chatting as to his vision, the past, the present, and the future of Foya Free Pentecostal Mission. If you can call in. We have the number right there on the screen. The number is 539-525-1552. Make your comments or ask him a question if you can. Be a part of this conversation. It's very, very important. So we will. My next question to you is: now that you have this desire and prayer of going back to help your people, the state. Now that we've handled the part of the institution, the school, the hospital, the state of the hospital, we have learned that it was there was an agreement that was entered into with the Foya district administration. What do you have to say with regards to that? What is that something you could have done if you were there, or what is it? Tying up the hospital, what Falabima has created with that of the district.
Well, I think the first thing you want to establish regarding the hospital is the paradigm on which the hospital was built. The hospital was built as an arm of the church. That's the fundamental thing. Mm-hmm. And number two, you have to know that it was built out of compassion and the love of the Swedish people. And we benefited from that greatly. So many people came to know Jesus Christ, who I can name, a host of them, through the love of the missionaries and the love of God, right, that they came to the hospital. I would not betray that trust. I would not, for any reason. When I was there, the district and the representatives and government wanted to take over the hospital. It has always been a fight for them to take over it. But we wanted to preserve it, not because we wanted to be selfish, but we wanted to preserve the cause of Jesus Christ. That this was a medium of evangelism. Mm-hmm. And when it becomes blended with government, it becomes a social service. A social service is not redemptive. A Christian service in the love of Jesus Christ is redemptive. So what do we want is the question. Well, I believe that my dad's decision would be that it would be a service to the kingdom of God, not a service to the nation per se. So that's where the dichotomy is. Do we want to serve Jesus Christ, or do we want to serve the people and the people for themselves? I want to serve the people because God says so. I think that's my approach on that situation, right? Like if I were there, I understand why maybe they had to do what they did to bring government, because there were a lot of resources coming with the government, and it was a challenging time right after the war. But do we want to continue to have it that way? I don't know. But I think we'll do it differently. But here's the catch. If you want to kick the government out, then you must be able to replace what the government has put in there, or even better. And that's what, we need to look at. So that we look at the future, right, of not just taking away what they have, but we want to replenish something better than what the government can do.
Right.
Because I think the church can do better than the government.
So what assistance do you think you can muster with the support of former alumni and sons and daughters that God help through that ministry because I remember earlier this year when I paid a visit at the hospital, and it was sad to see, a lot, even beds, where patients are laying, on hardwood and stuff like that, and the surgery room, one operation room, and literally like on a hard table and stuff like that. Very hard to see, especially when you come from the Western world like us. What we've seen, um, what can you do in relation with those who are already there, those people that managers that are taking care of the hospital and those the administrative part of it, all of it. What can you do to help?
Well, I don't even want to take it as I'm afraid to take the ownership as what I can do, but I think we'll put it rather as what can God do. And I bring back to you the story of Moses. The I am that I am can do anything and better things.
Wow. So those of you, as you listening to us, call in, be a part, ask questions about the ongoing conversation that we are having about the Foya Free Pentecostal mission. Um, what's your input? Because I assume you visited a couple of times back and forth with regards to the church, which I think was the most interesting part for Labimba himself, where he grew up, preach all his life. The growth of the church. Do you think, you know, what do you think about the church?
Well, I think the church is, like you said, the heart of the circle. Um, if we're going to do missions, if we're going to do school, if we're going to do hospitals, the, the, the the backbone of what needs to happen is in the church. I visited the church. I was very impressed with the new construction. They have a very good church built,
Hmm.
but they have even outgrown the church already. So we're looking to see how we can increase the space. There's a problem of space right now. And we're also looking at how we can participate. And so when I had a meeting with last time I was there, they asked me a question, what can I do? And I say, well, the question is, what do you want me to do? It's not what I can do because I am a servant. I'm not coming to boss. I'm coming to serve. So what can I do? Where do you need me? How can I be a part of this? Because I'm still in transition, I must admit. Leaving Canada with my family and grandchildren, or growing roots in that place to come and sit in Liberia, it has to be a God-made decision. It's not a decision I can make lightly, but I can go in and support them in different ways and so on. There are a lot of things I see differently in terms of theology, in terms of practices and so on.
Mhm.
That I would rather have a conservative look at things than a contemporary look at things right now. There are certain fundamental things. I know the roots and why they did those things. I would like to keep and to grow roots in so that the church can be what it was. Because I have never seen a church as powerful as that church anywhere around the world in my travel.
Wow.
The fellowship, the love, and the commitment, and the dedication, and the militancy of the gospel, I have not seen anywhere. So I think it would be a tragedy for us to lose that touch, to lose that perspective, to lose that blessing that God put into our people. They pray so hard and so well, and they've seen so many things that God did for them. Like, yeah, when the book is produced, you see a lot of miracles. I'm looking at specific stories of people who are still alive. I just did an interview not too long ago of one of the ladies who came from one of the towns.
Right.
Husband was a Muslim, and how this lady got converted. It's unbelievable. It's a mystery of how God brought the conversion. Yeah, and even when this lady begins to talk to you, you will see something, you feel something. So I want to pick some of those stories and put them together and show the work of God through the ministry of Reverend Father Bimba, what God has done through him. I can tell you one thing as I begin to dig into the stories of what God was doing in his life and through his life. I got more respect for him now in death than when he was alive. He was really a man of God.
So another thing I would love to find out is when it comes to the pastoral part of the church, um, how is it set up? Is it set up in the way it is? Some churches are you're a pastor and you're going to serve X number of years, and someone else going to take over stuff like that. Has it been like because growing up until Father Bimba passed, he was the pastor. That's one aspect of my question. Another aspect I may want you to touch on is this retirement thing that has been going on when it comes to the Free Pentecostal Mission. How did it come about? If you are aware of that, you may want to pick up from that, because that's my most interesting question right there. Because we heard that the mission wanted to retire Mr. Bimba, Fala Bimba. Um, what's your take on that? And lots of other elders and
First of all, it's not Pentecostal for that to happen. Why do I say it's not Pentecostal thing to do? Number one, the Free Pentecostal is called Free Pentecostal, meaning autonomous. That every church, every local church, in the doctrine of the Free Pentecostal has the right to determine who is the pastor, who is the elder. And there was no interference by anybody else from a different local church. This is patterned after the New Testament church. That every church is autonomous, which means you are self-governed.
right.
Now, I'm hearing that Swedish mission want to tell the church what to do. Now you can see the infringement there. That it is a foreign policy that's again unbiblical. It's a Western policy, and that doesn't make it right because it's unbiblical. So I can see a problem there in terms of theology, in terms of the very foundation of the church itself. Then two, we're told by the scripture that the gift of God is unrepentant. It's irrevocable. So who are you to revoke the gift of somebody?
Wow.
You can see the challenge there, right?
Right.
And I see that it was all church polity. Church polity is the way churches are governed, and people wanted to take over, and that's why they did those things. And then they didn't even do it right, because here is the catch. When they said that to my father, and we negotiated that with them, they said that they couldn't change it, that they wanted to do it because the Swedish say so. So I said, okay, if we're going to go with what the Swedish have said in a Western way,
right?
You want me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to do it the way the Western people want it, then here's what needs to happen. Then you have to follow every labor practice and labor law. And the labor law will require you to pay a person who you want to retire from the day they started working for you up to the point you got to give them some severance. The severance amount of money that you got, the admission didn't have that money.
Right.
Yeah. So then I brought that point out. They say, oh, no, this is a spiritual thing. Oh, well, it's a spiritual thing. Then let's go back to what the Bible says then. And that was the end of that dialogue. But eventually, they took us to have a discussion with the vice president. So when the vice president said, gentlemen, this mission was built by this man. We know about God and Christianity today because of Reverend Father Bimba. You cannot say that you can put this man aside. You cannot. And the vice president told them to.
That's like the only lifeline for him.
Yeah.
So it's like killing him, right?
Yeah. So they rescinded the letter, but he was dead by then anyway. They took back the letter, and then we tried to reconcile and bring it together, because here was a situation. We told them the old man is on his deathbed. We can reconcile, and he will bless all of us and so on. But they had their own fears and their own reasons for not being able to do it.
But that's one aspect, Mr. Bimba, when it comes to just your father. This agreement affected other elders and members who suffer for the love for the faith. And I think I'm not even quite sure if it is still going on or being implemented, but it affected a lot of other people.
Well, it affected a lot of people, but most of the people who it's going to affect are the people who are in power right now. They think it's a funny thing to do, but if you have the calling of God on your life, who is meant to resign? Who, like the Bible says, you cannot judge God's servant because he's not your servant, he is God's servant.
Right.
So who are you to remove somebody when this person is not really your servant? It's a servant of the Lord. So I think it's a crossing of the line, in my view, and it creates a lot of headache and pain for our people who went through that experience. And I want to say that this is a Western idea. It's not a biblical idea. So is the church going to continue to be unbiblical and Western? And you're going to be Western in one way and not in other ways?
Right. Because
So,
here in the US and even in Canada, if someone is retiring, they almost have almost all their savings, everything is worked for all their life.
And they have services that
Right.
will help them to be able to make up their life and so on. But it has to be, first of all, as an administrator, if I am going to render such decision, it has to be an agreement at the time of employment. At the time of employment, so that when that time comes, it happens because it's an institutional policy. But you cannot bring a policy in the middle of the game. It's like changing the rules in the middle of the game. So, I mean, you can see the unfairness of it. If the person who is being retired agrees to do that, it's a different matter. But if the person doesn't want to do that, I think it's injustice, labor injustice, for the most part of it.
Right.
And I think also nobody has the right to control a servant of the Lord. They know what God called them to do, and when they can't do it, they will tell you. They will tell you. I think that is something that we need to re-examine. If I have a say in it, we have to re-look at those things and look at what we can accept as Liberians, as a Christian group of people with our own belief system.
Wow.
What does the Bible say about this? You want to tell me where the Bible says that when Paul was at a certain age that he was going to be retired? Who in the Bible was retired? Elijah wasn't retired. Moses wasn't retired. God took them when he was ready to take them. Elijah went to heaven in the chariot when God was ready to take them. So the one who appoints is the one who hires and who fires. Isn't that the truth? It's a simple common sense. The one who hires is the one who fires. Who hired the people of God, the men of God? It's God who hired them. It's God who can fire them.
Wow. That's a whole mouthful right there. That's a whole mouthful. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd love you to call in. If you do have time to call in, we'd love to hear from you. We have about 14 minutes left for this segment of our show. At controls is Sam Gadu, and my guest is Mr. Nathaniel Bimba. We are discussing the past, present, and the future of Foya Free Pentecostal Mission. Before we're going to take just a 1 minute break and play you a little bit of music so we can just wrap up from here. Until then, just listen with us. Okay, welcome again. Thank you for listening and being with us on this show. This is Sam Gadu at Talk TV Media Network. My guest in studio is Mr. Nathaniel Bimba. I will take you from that aspect from our discussion. I want to take you on a national level, the Free Pentecostal Mission in general. I remember there is I will put it this way: the entire Free Pentecostal Mission used to have gathered together in somewhere in Balaho, to be more specific, once a year, every year, where they congregate and be able to worship and give reports and stuff. And this has been happening for years. And it's still going on. some of us have done a little bit of research, passing through. What is your advice, your perspective, when you see this mission, what it was then? Worshiping the same church, congregating in the same place. People meet, they have to build huts with palm torches and sit to eat under. The same thing is still happening. I'm talking about innovation here, being able to think further to improve the facilities for all these pastors and elders and members that come from all over Liberia. What do you have to say, with regards to that?
Well, I was privileged to have been around in the local area when our father, one of the pioneers of the gospel movement, Reverend Robert Taylor, died. I had gone there, and right there when I was there at the funeral, they had a groundbreaking ceremony. So they gave me the honor to break grounds. And my take on it is that we have to do more because you still have buildings that served the church for 40 years and it's still serving us. I think something is wrong. Something is wrong. But then, unfortunately, they told me that there was a building committee, and if I wanted to join that committee, I could, and I did. So we sat down and on the blueprint, have a more modern type of a building that should be there. I'm hoping that when I go back, I'll continue working with this committee to envisage a place that could be conducive for me or my children or your children when they come here.
Right.
Because you have intergenerational really connection right now with people in the country and people out of the country. Now, if you want these people out of the country to be a part of this, you got to consider them into what you're putting together. So we could probably come up with a landmark of the Free Pentecostal in Balahu to show who we are, because I don't even know how many churches are in a Free Pentecostal right now. I asked the pastors and they didn't have that information. But I think that's information that needs to be known. We need to know how many people are attending.
You mean the pastors didn't even know?
They didn't know
how many member churches?
Yeah, not to mention how many members are in the Free Pentecostal church.
Wow.
Well, the importance of that is that we can't plan for anything without knowing the statistics, without numbers.
Right.
Numbers we have directly.
Numbers are very important.
Very, very,
very,
important.
very significant.
So I would like to challenge them and encourage them that they need to do their homework. And we have a good dialogue with the gentleman, Reverend Kante and Reverend Jalakoma. They are listening, and we are having a dialogue. And bringing change is a very tricky thing. You don't want to bring change when people are not ready to get the change. So we are being change agents that will engage and educate and help people to see why we should do it differently. But we already see them moving in the direction of building a new conference center. And I would not want a conference center for a conference center. I would look for a complex that would do all kinds of things for us as Free Pentecostal movement.
Right.
A complex that would represent the stature of our denomination in the country. Because there's no building in Liberia that really demarcates the Free Pentecostal church. None. There's nowhere. Besides the small isolated churches.
And this has been going on, sadly
for
enough,
40 years or
over
more.
40 years.
Yeah, so it's about time that all of us in the diaspora and those in Liberia work together to develop the mission
Right.
to a higher level, a level that meets the needs for the diaspora of Free Pentecostal members and those who are in the country. And I'd like to bring that to them that, when you're planning, don't just plan for you here. Plan for those who are out there, because our kids will want to go there one day.
Right.
Yeah. And they can't go under those conditions, the 40-year condition.
Yeah. Eating food on the ground.
Yeah.
No chairs to
No
sit on to
place.
receive the word.
Yeah. Nothing.
Yeah.
No,
That's a little tedious.
So-
very hard.
I think it's doable.
Not just for our children, but even those that are on the ground.
Even for
Ourselves
themselves.
and themselves.
Yeah, I don't know how
Yeah.
they have been doing this for all these years and didn't think about it. There's a need for developing that facility to a place where where you're convenient, where you can have a camp, and where you can even bring a family. Right now, it's not even a family place; it's more of a campsite.
Right.
Like you do a rest place when you're driving and you
Yeah.
just stop for rest. That's what it is. Even I could even compare with the rest places you have in America or in Canada, because the rest places have everything you need. Yeah. So we need to do a little bit much to put to action our words, our belief system, and I believe it can be done. There are so many ways it can be done. I mean, if you have in the Foya church alone, I understand there are 500 young people. The youth membership of the church is in 500.
Wow.
If I got that 500,
Just the youth in Foya
yeah,
itself
sure.
alone.
If I have
That's a lot.
that number of young people, I would take the world.
Wow.
There's a lot of power, a lot of human resource there that can be used to do a lot of things. A lot of things.
Change. If you believe in it, you can do it. If you see it with your eyes of faith, with your visionary eyes, it can be done. And these are the words that we are discussing, trying to make sure the Free Pentecostal Mission, where it has come from. What do you, as we wrap up, what do you have to say to Liberians in the diaspora that have benefited one way or the other through this mission?
Well, I think you mentioned that to whom much is given, much is required. And, I'm thinking seeing you and seeing what you're doing here and seeing me here tells me that God is in the doing of something wonderful beyond our expectation. Maybe 20 years ago, when I was state principal, I wouldn't have dreamed I was going to sit in Tulsa to do an interview. Now, that tells you that what God is going to do in the future could be even better and bigger. So I would challenge every one of us in the diaspora to think about ourselves, but to also think about our country and our people. I know that there's so much. You wouldn't have been you had it not been for what Foya made you. What the church made you. God made you through the church. You wouldn't have been you. So that tells you that a part of you is part of that place. Or at least that's how I feel. Whatever I am is what God made through other people to make me who I am today. So I owe that to them. So I want to challenge us in the diaspora that there are a lot of good things that we can do. I know people hear a lot of negative things about Liberia and other things and so on, but here's my challenge. My challenge is this. It is going to take the church to do what Liberia needs to be done. Governments fail us again and again and again, and every government comes with a new promise and so on, and you find out they fail. They get into the same trench.
But you're talking.
So the church agency is a real change agency.
Let me hold you right there, Mr. Bimba. Talking about the church being that agency, people we have seen all over Liberia, and you put people in positions instead of doing for the institution that you put them in charge of. They are embezzling and getting a little bit of everything that drops for the interest of the people, and they are establishing their own personal institutions, as in schools and pharmacies and local clinics and stuff, with stuff that could benefit the entire community. What do you have to say with regards to that? Because this is happening.
Your question really challenges me, because that's even happening in the church that I'm speaking for.
Yeah.
Well, I'm speaking of the church as the New Testament church, as a church as it was funded. Because you see, most of education and health was done by the churches in the old days, in the 60s, coming to the 70s and 80s.
Right.
It was the church, the Phoebe Hospital, the different hospitals, the current hospital in also the Foya Mission, the Burma Hospital, and so on. It was a church that delivered services for the people, and the delivery was very efficient. So if you go look at it from a historic point of view, we can see that the church stands a greater chance of doing much good for the country than the governments in terms of services. So if I were in government, I would try to partner with churches to bring better delivery of services and so on, instead of isolating, oh, you're religious people, we don't want to talk to you, and so on. Because the history of Liberia has incorporated the provision of services to the churches and the missions, the education. most educated people in Liberia who are really, really educated came through the missions and the churches. Some mission.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. You know, time is fast spent. That's our biggest enemy, as always. Time. We are our time here is done, and we have had a former principal of the Foya Free Pentecostal Mission School, Mr. Nathaniel Bimba, with us. I know there are more other topics to discuss. We look forward to bringing you back. In closing, what do you have to say? Any word to our listeners and our audience?
I want to say to listeners, thank you for listening and thank you for thinking along with me. My idea, whether it might be controversial, there are a lot of things I said I could be controversial, but that's how I see it. You could see it differently, but maybe if we sit together and talk about it, we might develop something new. And I believe the Liberians and churches need to stop thinking in the box and get out of the box to look at what they could do differently. One of the areas that I encourage the churches in Liberia is to go into agriculture. Agriculture is a source of economy. Mm-hmm. And Liberia has got everything that it needs to develop itself. Right. For example, you have 12 months in a year to grow food. In Canada, where I am, we have 3 to 4 months to grow food. Right. And yet Canada feeds the country. So if Canada can feed the world, what could we do as a church if we were doing farming in churches and schools and hospitals together? So I told them that we're missing one component. Right. The component of economic regeneration or generation is missing in what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And we're still waiting for people to look for churches overseas to come and help us. I think that age has come and gone. We should look at what does God have in our hands that we can use. Question of Moses still comes to mind. Mm-hmm. When God asked Moses, what do you have in your hand? Yeah, we have a stick in our hand, but there's something powerful in that stick that God can transform into doing bigger things rather than, being receivers and receivers. It is more blessed to give than to receive. So what is the Church of Liberia going to be given? It's a challenge, it's a call. What do you have in your hands as a church? What do you have in your hands as a church, as an individual? Thank you very much for coming, joining us, Mr. Bimba. We highly appreciate that. And to those of you, our listening audience, before we close, this Friday, we will be having a pack. It's politics time coming this Friday. We will be looking at issues concerning the logging companies in Liberia, timber, iron ore, and other things. How exploitation is going on, and it's still going on when it comes to logging. We'll have a very, very special guest joining us from Liberia who has been investigating thoroughly these things that has been going on, depriving the Liberians and local people from their benefits and stuff. So we'll be bringing all of that. And what is the government of Liberia doing with regards to that? So it's a lot. It's coming Friday. Join us. Central Standard Time, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. That will be 6 Eastern Time. And for those of you in Liberia, that will be 10 o'clock p.m. your time. So we love to hear from you. This coming Friday, what is the government of Liberia doing? Is the government a part of what's happening, exploiting its citizens? We want to hear from you because we have a lot of information to pour out there for your hearing and for your viewing. Until then, we look forward to seeing you. Sam Gadu, Talk TV Media Network. Visit us online on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and the website www.talktvmedia.com. You have a blessed night, and I'll see you tomorrow. Wonder.